Palantir versus SoFi, which is the better stock to run the wheel strategy on in 2025 and beyond? Let's see. Yo, what's going on, premium chasers? I hope you're having an absolutely God blessed day. If you drop a comment down below in today's video, I'm going to send you my 25 favorite Ark Options Strategy stocks completely for free. No opt-in, anything like that. Just drop a comment down below in today's video and hit that like button and that subscribe button. But guys, today we are talking about Palantir versus SoFi, probably the two most popular options traded stocks that you see here on X, on YouTube. And today we're putting them head to head to see which one is more of an ideal stock for running the wheel strategy. Now, the first and foremost thing that we have to get out of the way, right, is understanding what our budgets actually are, right? Obviously, Palantir right now is trading around $172. So the first and foremost thing that we need to understand is there's a huge price discrepancy between Palantir and SoFi, which of course is going to limit your budget. Now, if you already, running the wheel strategy on Palantir and you're running with like a $20,000 account, right, you can either do like one contract of a Palantir cash secured put, or you could do many contracts of a SoFi. So let's go look at what those returns actually even look like if we were going to be able to do, or if we were going to do some cash secured puts on both. So obviously Palantir right here, technical wise, at least at the time of me recording this, Palantir did see a nice drop here from its all-time highs of 206 down all the way to around that 155-ish level towards that bottom Bollinger Band area. And we had a nice massive volume spike in here, which was very nice. And what do you know? It obviously bounced off that bottom Bollinger Band, which we typically see, and now trading around 173, obviously up 3.5%, at least at the time of me recording this video, and still above the 200 and 300-day moving averages, okay, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, heading over to the actual options chain, let's go take a look at what some of the monthly puts look like. Now, I primarily like to do monthlies as opposed to weeklies because weeklies do take a little bit more management. Your returns are slightly higher when you are doing weeklies, but it does require a little bit more management on your part. Now, that's totally going to have to be a decision that you make, right? So I'm going to go out around 30 days. So we'll just go out 31 days to that closest expiration, which is January 2nd. And now here we are selling a put. If you don't know what selling a put means, all I'm saying is I'm willing to buy 100 shares of Palantir at close on the 2nd if it's trading at a price that I am comfortable buying it, right? So for the sake of this example, we're going to stick to roughly the same probabilities on both sides of SoFi as well as Palantir, right? So you could see here, if we did the 170s, we're collecting $775. Obviously not financial advice, results vary. These are just the premiums I'm seeing on my screen at the time of this recording. But I want to look for something that, is really giving me some support, right? So when I look at a chart, guys, and I'm no Picasso, I'm no Picasso with the candlesticks, but I'm looking at where we saw some support recently, right? So right here, when we saw the drop here down to that 155-ish level, I'm shooting for something around there. Now, ideally, in a perfect scenario, right, I want to be around a 200 or a 300-day moving averages, but as you're going to see, it's not necessarily possible with a Palantir or a SoFi anymore because these stocks, right, have there's been on an absolute tear recently. So for me to try to find 140 puts, you're going to see here there's probably no juice, right? So for example, like the 140s right here, if I looked at this contract, right, let's say I'm collecting between the bid and ask spread, let's just say I'm collecting $120 of premium on this. I'll toss this into my cash secured put calculator, right? And let me zoom in here. All my calculators and trade logs are free, guys. Just attend the Ark Options Strategy workshop. It's about an hour-and-a-half long training showing you the Ark Options Strategy, which takes the wheel strategy to the next level. And at the end, I give you all of my calculators and trade logs completely for free. So for example, if I did the 140 puts, I'm locking up $14,000, obviously, but I'm only getting about 0.86% return on my collateral. Now, you have to go find out what your financial goals are, what you want to do. Obviously, go speak to a financial advisor, do whatever you got to do. But for me personally, I wouldn't take this trade because to me, if I'm only doing 0.86% a month, it's honestly not really worth selling options in my personal opinion. And even if I open up this contract here, right, I always like to look at the delta, right? So this delta right here is basically your probability of assignment. So this being a 0.08, it's about an 8% chance that I would actually get assigned at 140 at close on the 2nd, having to buy the shares, or a 92% chance that it is going to expire worthless, okay? Depends on your strategy. I know I speak to a lot of people that like to do 10 delta deltas because they're working with a tremendous amount of capital. So they're just purely going for income play, right? So, but that depends on what your specific situation actually is. But for the sake of this example, let's just shoot for something a little bit more aggressive. So again, looking at the chart here, I'm looking at something where, you know, I'm mixing a good chance of assignment. And if I take assignment, it's at a price that I'm comfortable owning it and I'm fairly confident would recover, right? Because when we sell a put, we are essentially saying we're going to get assigned. That's just the reality of the situation, right? So you trust me, it feels a lot better when you go into it knowing you're actually going to probably get assigned, right? As opposed to then being caught off guard. So I see on the chart, at least like around that 155 is what I want to aim for. I want to hit around 155. We saw a lot of volume, a massive volume spike in at 155. So there is some good support there. Okay. So looking at the 155s, let's crack that open. And you can see my delta here is a 0.20, 20% chance of assignment, 80% chance of expiring worthless. I like that trade, especially on a high flying stock like Palantir, where if I'm going to get assigned, I want to get assigned at a very good price, considering the current share price is at $173 and the strike price that I'm selecting here is $155. And you could see how much my premium actually jumped up here, and the bid and ask is fairly tighter. So we'll just assume we're going to collect, let's say, $330 of premium on this specific trade. So tossing this back into the cash secured put calculator. Now I'm wrapping up a little bit more, just $1,500 more of collateral, but take a look at my return now on my collateral. Obviously results vary, not financial advice. This is just what I'm seeing at my screen at the time of this recording. You could see the premium divided by the collateral that I'm locking up for that 31-day period. I'm collecting about a 2.13% return on my collateral, which for me personally is what I like to aim for. So this would potentially be a trade that I would end up executing. So now let's go take a look at SoFi, right? Let's bring our chart into view and see what SoFi is actually doing. This is how I do it, guys. Like this is like how I actually, execute my my specific trades. Oops, no, what happened? Let's see if I can get my screen back in order here. Alrighty, this is what happens when you have multiple monitors, guys. So we could see on the SoFi chart, right? We could see that SoFi had a big pullback here, especially over the last couple weeks, down to those 24 levels, okay? And then we saw a nice spike up. Now we're trading at close to $30, $29.77 at the time of me recording this video. So we saw a nice, beautiful bounce off that bottom Bollinger Band, and look at the volume spikes where we're at currently right now. So a lot of people have stepped in at those levels, and I expect that SoFi will continue to see a upward momentum towards that 32 level. I do believe SoFi will hit all-time highs again. So with that said, 200 and 300 day moving averages, right? We're pretty far off that at this point. 21 for the 200 day, 17 for the 300 day. So let's go over, and I'm going to quickly copy and paste this as well so we can compare what a 20 delta put would look like on SoFi with Palantir. So let's go ahead and go click into SoFi. And I'm going to go to the Trade SoFi Options section. I'm going to click Sell at Put. And then just to keep everything congruent, I'm going to go out to the January 2nd expiration day. I've been running the weekly wheel strategy on SoFi. If you're in some of our private groups, you know that I've been really enjoying it. A little bit more management, of course, but it's been a lot of fun. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to try to find my 20 delta, right? So let's take a look at that 24s, because we saw a good amount of, we saw a nice bounce from that 24-ish level, right? So that would be a nice little support for me to jump into on a put. But we could see that that's only about an 11 delta. So let's just say 10% chance of assignment, and a 90% chance of expiring worthless. So I want to be around the 20 delta. So let's look at the 25s. 25s are still at a 15 delta. Let's go a little bit more aggressive. Let's go take a look at the 26s. Perfect. That is a 0.20 delta, just like we have with Palantir side. And we are collecting $66, maybe a little bit more. Let's just say $68 of premium on this specific trade. So let me put that into my calculator. We're collecting $68 of premium on that, and we are locking up our strike price. We're saying is 26, so that would lock up $2,600 of collateral of ours, and it would give us a 2.62% return on our money. Now, which trade is ideal? Well, number one, you have to figure that specific situation out for yourself. My rule of thumb is, which stock would you actually be comfortable holding long term? Palantir or SoFi, right? Or both. There's nothing wrong if you have the collateral to run the strategy on both. But purely from a return on collateral perspective, we obviously are getting a very nice juicy return from SoFi as compared to a Palantir. And of course, if we had about a $20,000 budget, we would be able to open additional contracts on SoFi right here to hit closer to that $15,000 level. Now, obviously, these are very volatile stocks, both SoFi and Palantir. So you have to be able and be comfortable to weather the storms. And what do I mean by that? Well, expect assignment to be more common, especially when you're hitting these 2% ROI, especially over 2.5. When we start hitting 2.5 ROI on our collateral, 3.5, 4% ROI on collateral a month, your risk goes drastically higher. I don't care what the delta says at that point, right? Because at that point, you are taking on a massive risk. Remember, as an option seller, we're essentially insurance salesmen, right? We are essentially insurance salesmen, right? So we want to make sure that we are being compensated for the risk we are taking. So an 80-20 split is usually what I like to do, right? You guys know a lot of my stuff ends up, I close out early. You most likely too. There's been studies done by the SIBO that 80% of options contract either expire worthless, or they're closed out early, or they expire worthless, right? So you have to set those odds in your favor, right? When you're playing closer to the money because you're truly premium chasing, right? You have a lot higher chance of assignment, but you want to have a mixture of both, right? Don't fear assignment though, because when you fear assignment, right, that means you're going in without a plan. And the last thing you want to do is do something without going in with a plan. Guys, if you want all of these calculators completely for free, my covered call, my cash secure put calculator, and my full trade log that you're going to be able to download and start tracking all of your progress, because we already know these brokerages track stuff like absolute crap, especially if you're an option seller. Click the first link in the description of today's video, attend the Ark Options Strategy workshop, learn this strategy, and then especially go and implement it for yourself. Guys, remember, sell options, collect premiums, repeat. I'll see y'all tomorrow.